Hello and welcome to Trader Talk TV. My name is Lindsay Roundtree. I'm from Exchange Wire, and today I am delighted to be joined by Jürgen Galler, who is founder and CEO of 1plusX. Hello, Jürgen.
Hey, how are you doing, Lindsay?
I'm good. How are you?
All great over here in Switzerland.
Fantastic. I am really excited to hear about what you're talking about today. So we're looking into predictive data and the power of predictive data and data enrichment through the likes of AI and machine learning. Sounds very complicated, but it's a really fascinating topic and something that people need to really be taking on board with the news around kind of what the future of the cookie looks like. So very excited to hear more about this. So let's kick off by finding a little bit more about 1plusX and what you guys are actually up to in the industry.
Yes, absolutely. Let me actually kind of share a couple of slides. Great. So, Lindsay, actually, kind of everybody that listens, let me actually kind of, outline a bit who is 1plusX. So, we were founded in 2014 by a bunch of actually kind of ex-Google engineers, product managers, with a passion for machine learning, for data enrichment. And with the goal to actually kind of help media companies and marketers to improve marketing data, marketing intelligence by providing a really leading predictive engine. So we are very tech driven, and you can actually maybe already hear that. Ex-Google product engineering. We have a global footprint, so we're really like, even though we started here in Switzerland, we have, moved, followed our customers actually kind of that today are in Japan, in actually kind of Asia, in Europe, obviously. So we started off in Europe, but also we have now clients in the US, so pretty much all over the world. And, we have a remarkable growth. So we're growing really fast. Even, the last year's pandemic has really pushed digital data, and there's actually kind of also all the developments around legislation, privacy has actually kind of really pushed demand for predictive technologies like ours. So, we are really growing fast, and obviously we are privacy by design, supporting GDPR, CCPA, and so on. You see a couple of logos down there of clients that work with us. We have many more, but those is just a selection.
And it's obviously you work with a lot of publishers, and that's where you started your business. But what I'm interested to find out more about when we get into the conversation is how you're starting to work with brands as well, and kind of how they're working with you, and also the fact that you've been going for quite a long time. But the topic of what you guys focus on is becoming really to the forefront at the moment. So isn't it interesting to hear kind of the evolution of those that started with you, the early adopters when it came to predictive modeling and looking at data enrichment through a different lens, away from the cookie, to those that are trying to look at it now with all the news and confusion happening around what the future of privacy is and what the future of the cookie is in the industry in general. So I'll let you continue with kind of what direction we're taking the conversation in today.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me actually kind of jump maybe to the next slide and outline a bit like what the principles of our work are. And we actually kind of use this kind of circle to show that. But I think you're totally right. I think when we started, we were focusing very much on data processing. We were actually focusing on machine learning, and a lot of, let's say, 2015, 2016, a lot of the media companies, and we decided to work for media companies because they have a lot of unused data in general. They said like, predictive technology, I really want to have more deterministic data. I'm not so sure about this predictive technology, but they actually then learned that predictive data is generally, even better in many cases than deterministic data. So we did a lot of quality benchmarks, testing the quality of our prediction against what these clients initially actually kind of used third-party data. And that led them to say like, wow, this is really amazing. You give us more data, it has better quality. And that really kind of pushed the market, the demand. So today, we actually do much more. We, really manage the entire data collection for our clients in a fully real-time capable pipeline. We actually kind of support the predictive technology. We supply the predictive technology for our clients through something that we call the 1plusX embedding. So this is a combination of deep learning technology and machine learning technology that allows us to do really high quality predictions for our clients. And we obviously have a big data store where we then activate all those user profiles, asset profiles, audience profiles, whatever actually kind of our clients need to the respective activation channel. And being a marketing intelligence platform, that can be obviously an ad server, but it can actually also be, a content management system looking for personalization set and so on. So, I think like you really got a really good point there where you said like, hey, how was it at the beginning? How has the evolution actually kind of developed? At the beginning, we were really focusing on this, let's say, more green part down here with the embeddings, doing a lot of actually kind of predictive technology. But more and more, our clients actually kind of wanted us to also do the data collection, to actually do the entire activation, value generation. And then we developed this circle also because we, not only look at actually kind of collecting data from, let's say, behavior and so on, but we also look at how our predictions impact the business of our clients. Are we really helping them, improving their quality, their predictive quality? And we learn from that. And by doing that, we actually kind of have this, reinforcing circle that and cycle that actually kind of, improves time over time and leads to really impressive quality. So let me actually show you a bit more about what we do there in terms of data collection and processing activation. So let me actually kind of jump to my next slide. So, one thing is when we speak about data collection, we have a holistic data collection, meaning obviously we look at the behavior, like which user interacts with what type of, let's say, media or internet or digital service, and how does this user actually interact with it. But we also look at the content analysis. So we really, pull out those articles, we analyze them, we look at the videos, all that kind of content analysis that is required to understand with what a user interacts is done. Plus we actually ingest any other data that is out there. Can be CRM data, can be ad logs to understand how certain predictions have impacted the advertising, can be typical, let's say, first-party logins. All that kind of data is brought together in what we call our embedding space. And this animation shows a bit like how that data is then evolving from, let's say, just being data into being information, into being, usable data. We colored it in different patterns, meaning different clusters of content, and users are actually kind of positioned in what we call this hyperdimensional model of continuous learning, right? So this is a real-time process, and it really kind of improves all the time. So every person, every asset that we have in there, content asset, is repositioned all the time. And from it, we basically kind of derive, on the one hand, a full user profile, combining deterministic data and predicted data, but we also actually derive an asset profile. And that is also, besides being a predictive platform, is also one of our, I think, USPs, that we can combine a user understanding with a content media understanding, and we can actually kind of provide both. We can provide you information about, hey, who is this user? What's his gender, his age, education, interest, income, and so on. All that kind of information is automatically added. But we can also say like, hey, this asset, what is this asset about? It's about a financial article, is mostly read by males, mostly in this income level, mostly with this interest, in this age, actually kind of distribution. So we actually provide both turnkey out of this platform, and you can then use it for, if you actually kind of do, obviously, targeted advertising, you can use it for user-centric targeting if you use the user profile, if you actually kind of have an ID that you can use to identify the user, or you can, if you don't have this ID, you can actually use context-centric targeting.
That's really interesting. And I'm interested in, first of all, I guess, is there is there a way, where does the user profile and the asset profile come together, if you like, and where does the predictive aspect of this come into play? And also, there's a lot of talk around context, and there's a lot of marketers in particular that don't really trust context. They believe it's not very accurate. They believe it's not a good way of targeting somebody. I guess the way that you're trying to use data here and show what data can do is debunking that to some degree, and explaining that actually, no, context has evolved quite a bit from when you used it 10 years ago. There's a lot of things you can do now to really target the people that you know are your audience. Like how do you have that conversation with people about the power that context can bring?
Well, I think, exactly. I think a really good point, a really good question. I think it's really important to understand that in the past, we've always had actually kind of companies doing user targeting and context targeting, context relevant targeting, right? So maybe the editorial team was more context focused, the advertising team was more user focused and so on. But I think over time now, with the evolution of brand advertisers that want to have certain context, safety, and the evolution of actually kind of machine learning, we can see that by understanding the context, you can understand the user better, and also with the fact that we have more privacy limitations, and we can very often not directly target a user. Targeting the context actually kind of gives you an ability to have a fallback solution, right? So we call this we call this adaptive targeting. And what we automatically do in our platform, we say like, okay, we know this user, we can actually we have a profile about this user, so we can actually kind of, target along this user. But if we don't know the user, we know the context, and the context learns from the user. So we know which user has actually kind of really looked at what content, or what asset profile, as we call it, and vice versa. The user is enriched, learning from the asset, from the content, right? So it's actually kind of a bit like a ping pong between learning about the user, depending on what kind of content he has actually kind of, or she has actually consumed, and learning about the asset, depending on which users are actually kind of consuming it. So I think this, if you bring this together, this is very powerful. And we have done this right from the beginning of our company, like when we started actually the company, and therefore it's really a powerful construct that is very, very welcome. Also, we have to say that, very often, like, users have different identifiers depending on the platform. So let's say you actually gonna go on mobile native, you have a device ID. You go on the web, you have maybe still a cookie, a third-party cookie, in the future a first-party cookie. You go somewhere else, you have a login and so on. But so that makes it hard to actually really follow the user. Obviously, we do identity management, so that's a solution for that. But if you look at the content very often has a unique identifier across these different actually kind of platforms. And so it's very often easier to actually kind of directly link information also about gender and age, not only about, what is this article about, or what is this video about, to that asset profile, as we call it, and then use that for targeting. So that actually kind of really simplifies this also cross-platform portability of audience targeting.
Very interesting. So if I have a few select data points about a particular user, how can I use predictive data to enrich that further? How does that actually work?
Yeah, so let me actually kind of straight jump to my next slide for that. So typically, actually, when we start working with a customer, this customer has, let's say, a couple of data points. So in this matrix here, you see the blue ones are the known attributes per user, and the gray ones are the not known. So basically, missed attributes, data attributes per user. So in this example, for this user over here, this customer has an interest definition, but does not have age and gender. For this one here, he has age, but not gender, interest, and so on, right? So what we do is we actually take this, what we call deterministic data, together with the behavioral data and the content analysis, all this data that I showed in the slide before. We push it into our embedding space, into this hyperdimensional model. of user to asset interaction. And then from it, we actually retrieve, again, data that allows us to do predictions on every single attribute of a user. So we do an age prediction for user A, we do a gender prediction for user A, we do an age prediction for user B, and so on. So this then combines what we call deterministic data, like the blue ones, with the green ones, which is actually kind of the predicted data. And this predicted data, we have also very dedicated confidence levels. So we know how good the prediction is, and we take that into consideration when we build audiences, and our clients can actually kind of use that and can say like, okay, now today I want to actually build an audience with 75, 80% accuracy on gender type male, right? So that is actually kind of in a nutshell how we do it. So we start from, let's say, very little data, and we enrich it through the process that I also outlined before in this embedding space, and then we have predictions. We have dedicated actually kind of algorithms to do predictions for every single attribute that you actually see here to the right.
Okay, amazing. So we've now got this data. We've used predictive data, predictive modeling to find out more about our individual. How can we then predict their behavior? What are they going to do next?
Yeah, so in a first setup, we actually can predict standard attributes like gender and age and all the IB interests, classifications, and so on. Now, obviously, every client has its own processes. Some clients are interested in subscriber upselling, the other ones are interested in pure advertising performance, CTRs, and so on. Others are actually kind of interested in personalization. So what we actually kind of have is we also have what we call very fast lookalike mechanism. So from this predictive data, like what I outlined before, this combination of deterministic and predictive data, if you then see a certain behavior, like in this example here, you see that this user up here actually kind of registered to a certain service. If you see a certain behavior, you can actually immediately ask our platform to predict, to give you the intelligence, which other user has what probability to show this behavior. So actually going to be then completely so like, okay, these user down here, the next user has a 70% probability to show this behavior, the next one a 90%, and so on and so forth. And by doing this, you're totally flexible. So you could actually kind of pick any behavior in there. So we have clients that have use our platform to improve their targeting capability and conversion probability on registrations, but we have others that actually kind of do this on typical personalization, click-throughs into certain content areas, and so on. So there are different actually kind of use cases that you can drive, and the fantastic thing about this platform is that it is super fast and is super high quality. So we have very, very good experiences there with the application of this predictive algorithms.
Interesting. And so when you have those two types of profiles, you then want to be able to understand how I can actually reach so at this point, I know my audience, I know who they are. How can I ensure I reach them and that I'm actually accurately reaching them? Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe let me jump ahead a bit. So typically actually today, when you're looking at your reach, if, understanding you're a publisher or you're a media company, right? And you're now looking at your reach. Typically today, situation is you have some known users that you can actually kind of target. They have opted in, they actually kind of, you have collected some data and so on. Then you have some third-party data that you can still use because it's still actually kind of on the market. It's slowly vanishing, especially here in Europe. But it's out there, you're using it, it expands your reach. But then there is a lot, and this is here the gray area, there's a lot of reach typically that you don't, that you cannot access because you don't have data on it. You don't understand your users, you don't have actually social demographic data on your content and so on. So what we actually kind of do is like we think about this as a shell. So obviously you have your known users. Those give you a high accuracy because they've opted in, they gave you some data and so on. So let's say accuracy is 90%, but your reach is very limited. Now, what we do is we expand your reach by adding those predictions that are outlined before. And then the accuracy obviously goes a bit down because not always the predictions are of the same quality as, let's say, your known user data, but the reach increases massively. So we have many customers where, for example, on social demographic targeting, at 80% reach, we still give 80% accuracy. And that, I think, is a real achievement because thinking like a media company, this is absolutely monetizable inventory. And especially now thinking about the future, knowing that cookieless, is super important, this is even more valuable because all the technologies of the past, like using third-party cookies, using third-party data enrichment, will not be that usable in the future. And therefore, this kind of technology mixing first-party user profile understanding, content understanding is really the future. So I think, like, again, the combination of user profile and the asset profile, leads to this high reach and high targetability of your audience.
So this is helping me outside of my known users, would you say 20% of total market size, is helping me go beyond what I could reach with a third-party cookie into what would then be completely unreachable within my network. This actually helping me expand my reach beyond to a world I could never probably have dreamed of before, and help me really understand an audience beyond my known users, and hopefully then, as a result, expand that audience of known users to keep I guess, improving and evolving the cycle.
Absolutely, exactly. So you're actually kind of, rather than just using, let's say, deterministic data and third-party data, you're really building a huge data insight database on your own user, on your own content, and that actually kind of helps you reach, the maximum 100% actually kind of your audience and of your network. So we have actually kind of, in the past when third-party cookies already were blocked and on Safari, on Firefox, and so on, our clients actually kind of saw an increase in targetability because we always used a combination of predicted, in real time predicted user profiles plus content understanding to give them high quality audience schemes. And that is really important to understand that this technology is, future-proof and is the approach to go. We're totally convinced, and the fact that we're, signing up really leading publishers and brands just is a testimony of it.
And you're in the business of data creation almost, and data enrichment. Yeah. And we've talked about the fact that the business started kind of in the world of publishers, and you're now expanding into marketers too. And that puts you very much kind of in the middle of the supply chain for them when it comes to marketers and publishers having a closer relationship. Where do you fit, and how do you join those two together?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So I think, like, what we saw when working with publishers is that bringing marketer data into their, let's say, own data space is sometimes, labor intensive. You need to have people that actually kind of, take care of the data, put it in, clean it, then create your respective audiences and so on. At the same time, when working with marketers, we understood that many marketers actually kind of say like, I don't really want to give my data to every party out there, or I'm very sensitive to actually kind of sharing my data. So I really want something like a data clean room or something that really gives me a high security in sharing that kind of data. So what we build is, and this product actually kind of is called 1plusX Connect. We build a product that allows you to bring marketer data together with publisher data by basically kind of adding, picking a seed, what we call data set on the marketer side, and then overlaying it with the publisher data in a data clean room. And by doing so, actually kind of, then also creating lookalikes if somebody wants it. So you can actually just also do a data matching for retargeting purposes or other targeting purposes, but you can actually kind of also then create directly a lookalike and activate that audience. So this is you know, there are different data clean rooms out there and different offerings out there, but I think, you know, very specific to our offering is that it's absolutely digital marketing focused. So it not only actually is secure in terms of sharing the data, but it also manages the entire process. So, you know, really the marketer only picks, hey, this is my seed audience, this is the publisher I want to actually kind of work with, or the group of publishers. This is, you know, the target audience I want, and presses the button, and the audience is created and is directly feeded to the activation channel that the marketer wants, without sharing his data, the marketer data, to the publisher, but also without sharing the publisher's data with the marketer.
It's fascinating because obviously there'll be publishers and marketers everywhere that have heard of data clean rooms and gone, I don't know what they are yet, but they sound like they're the future of the industry, and I want one. A bit like when DMPs and CDPs first came out, everyone goes, I don't know what they are, but I want a DMP, I want a CDP. Well, it's this basically, isn't it? It is this. So it's enabling them to share their data with a publisher in a completely safe environment. I mean, we talk about there being a privacy first era. Do you believe that this is what will address us, this privacy first era? Do you believe we are in a privacy first era? Is there more to this? Is this the future of what data could look like for our industry?
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, I have to say that I'm really happy that the third-party cookie is being actually kind of hopefully discontinued in the future, and we have, you know, different concepts. We still have to see if then the Google Privacy Sandbox is going to, you know, evolve the way it has been defined. But I think, you know, all this data sharing with the cookies, huge matching tables, and nobody knew what data is where and what quality and so on. This just became too big and too distributed and no more controllable, I think. And that was an issue for, and still partly is, I think, for the marketers, for the brands, because they didn't know where their data was going, because it was actually connected to all these third-party data spaces. And also for the publishers, because they said like, wow, our data is just being, you know, aggregated somewhere through this third-party tracking technology. And I think, you know, the industries are like, you know, that's not a good actually kind of tendency. So let's cut back to it. And I think as a consequence, we're going to see more direct data exchange. So we're going to see more brands and marketers that are going to say like, hey, I want to work with these three publishers, or, you know, that one publisher, and I want to do a straight actually kind of deal with them. I want to measure with them. I want to communicate with them. I want to see if I can get actually some data insights from them, because typically also actually kind of, you know, brands in the past have actually kind of used third-party data to understand their audiences, and now with third-party data disappearing, they will need to look into, hey, where do I get insights on my users from? And I think publishers or media companies are a good source for that. On the other side, I think is a great opportunity for the publishers, this kind of data exchange setup. Why? Because, you know, historically, they were no more under control of their data, right? Their data was actually kind of managed by big networks that collected huge amounts of third-party data. Now this control is coming back to them. Obviously, it means more work. So you need to start actually kind of, you know, communicate with the marketers. You need to have the people that are ready to do this and so on. But it's a great opportunity, and therefore I think this is the future. I actually spoke with a very large publisher the other week here in Europe, and he said like, hey, from our top, you know, 80 customers, over half have actually kind of already, you know, applied such a data clean room approach to share their data with us.
Wow, interesting. So talking about reach and addressability in more detail, so I'm keen to understand how that is affected by the level of data I already have access to. So if I have access to IDs, access to third-party data, kind of to via cookies, via wherever my data comes from, how does my addressability, how does my reach levels, how are they impacted by that? And what data do I need to have to start with to make the most of this opportunity?
So we think about this in a level of actually kind of capability. So, first of all, I think today we're all using third-party tracking systems. It's still out there. It will be discontinued. We are starting to use first-party tracking system. Lots of our clients are already on a first-party setup with us. Then we have real-time targeting capabilities that we offer, like really predicting certain data points in real time. And obviously we have the contextual targeting capability. Now, we have situations where there are no cookie restrictions at all. In that kind of setup, it's very easy. Can use all 4 of those because there are no restrictions. So up to 100% total reach. Then you have the situation where you have first-party cookies only. So no more third-party cookies. Still, actually, you can use first-party tracking, real-time predictions, contextual targeting. Again, 100% reach. Why? Because we call this the adaptive tracking setup. Means that as soon as we see that there is no third-party tracking capability, we have a technology that says like, oh, in real time, let's use first-party, let's use real-time predictions. Let's actually kind of bring in the contextual insights we have, and that grants a super high quality targeting capability and gives you 100% reach. And then, if you have no, let's say, cookies or no IDs at all. So let's say the user is really opted out, right? So he's saying like, hey, don't use my PII to target me, but you still have real-time targeting capabilities. So meaning, hey, you don't use any, identifier of this user, but in real time, analyzing the behavior, analyzing the content he's interacting with, and so on, gives you a capability, and we predict on that. Plus, there is a contextual targeting capability. So again, you can still use 100% of your total reach, and you can still provide targeting information, targeting data against it. So I think that is a bit, let's say, the waterfall. We call it adaptive tracking. I was actually speaking about adaptive targeting before. So we're very much into like, we want to make the life of our clients as easy as possible. And therefore we put all this kind of intelligence in the background to say like, hey, we adapt to whatever situation you're coming in. Because we also believe that, targeting and advertising and ad tech, MarTech is becoming more and more complex. So it's really, really, with all this, let's say, fragmented worlds, Apple is doing like this, Google is doing like that, Microsoft is doing it like that. It's becoming more and more complicated. So it's really important to have a technology partner and, an adaptive technology that you can actually use there.
I think the adaptability is interesting actually, because what you're basically saying is that based on the level of data you already have, or the data you have access to, we will then enrich it up to the point where it would be to a similar level anyway. So we're not trying to almost over-enrich the data and give you more data than you know what to do with. We're going to give you the right data that helps you still target your audience without going above and beyond. Because there's an argument that many publishers and many marketers have been, for many, many years, have been taking data and taking lots of data just because they can, because they've got access to it, not using it, not knowing what to do with it. So what you're saying is the level of data you're using is the level of data they require. You're giving them as much data as they require, and not any more that becomes unnecessary.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, like, we are generally actually kind of, just taking what is there, we're enriching it to the level that is needed, and we actually kind of then use it in an adaptive way. So typically kind of very often when we speak with a client, he says like, hey, I don't have enough data. I don't think that my data is enough to you to work with us. And that generally kind of is, is not true. I mean, even if you have little data, let's say deterministic data, but you have enough behavioral data, which typically is the case, you can build something really, really cool out of it with a lot of value to your business.
And going back to the publisher conversation, you talked about publishers are finally able to regain control over their data. That's all well and good, but ultimately it comes down to their bottom line, right? So is this data translating into increased revenues for them? How does that work?
Yeah, let me quickly, first of all, actually kind of, I think, many customers we started to work with, they said like, hey, Jürgen, it's really nice that you actually can do all these cool predictions, but what we actually kind of need is we need high addressability in some of our core audience segments, very often being gender and age, but actually also kind of, car enthusiasts or, real estate, people that are looking for real estate and so on and so forth. So every market has its key audiences. And what we actually kind of do with our technology, we, triple, quadruple the size of these core audiences. So typically when, somebody maybe had just 1 million users that he could target against, let's say, males that are car enthusiasts and, have a high income, with our technology, suddenly he had 3 million, 4 million. And at a very high quality, providing actually kind of even better, let's say, CTR and results, also not only in brand advertising, but also in performance advertising, than, I would say like his old deterministic data, right? So this automatically obviously translates into revenue. And we're very much focused on providing, not only, let's say, data, but also data that is valuable to our clients. And what we can see, for example, with Axel Springer, they have started using our platform early on. They actually kind of really saw 100% actually kind of gain over 3 years in revenue coming from this targetability. And that is actually kind of, I think, pretty impressive because, you get more data and more choice to provide your clients with the audiences that they really need. So you get more specific, but you actually kind of also get broader, larger. You can fill certain campaigns much faster. And that is, really of high satisfaction, obviously, to the media companies, publishers, but also to the brands.
Interesting. And one final thing I wanted to ask you is, obviously we've talked a lot about data enrichment, but specifically around predictive data, how you can impart the accuracy of predictive data. If I were a marketer or publisher, I would be questioning, when you say the word prediction, what does that mean? Prediction to me means that it's got a probability of being wrong, incorrect. How can you promote the accuracy of predictive data when by its very nature it could likely be wrong?
Yes, so very good question. I think like many of our clients are always actually kind of testing us. We test our own data, obviously ourselves, we calibrate it. A typical way, and I just actually kind of, lay out some examples here. A typical way is to test against a market benchmark. So in this case, for example, we have a client that tested against Nielsen. He has some, it's still our client, he has some declared data, and, he wanted us to actually kind of be better on his anonymous side, right? So typically a client has maybe some declared data, varies in size, and then he has a lot of anonymous users. And we use, we benchmark the declared data. So how good is your declared data? And we benchmark our predictions. So in this case, we actually did, quality checks against gender, against Nielsen. Actually, not us did that, the client did it. And he saw that his declared data is on gender 73% correct measured against Nielsen, but our actually kind of predicted data is better than his declared data.
Wow.
And reaches close to 80% accuracy on the top 60% of his network. So I think this shows that very often you cannot trust declared data. I mean, everybody says like, yeah, if somebody tells you that he's male or female, whatever, that's true. But, I mean, typical story that I always say is like, I'm with a telco here in Switzerland, and I'm contracting, I'm male, obviously already a bit older, but I'm contracting for my entire family, right? So my daughter, 20 years old, according to the CRM of that telco, is a 50-year-old male, right? And that is kind of wrong, but her behavior and our predictive capability puts her as a 20-year-old female, and that actually kind of is where the improvement comes in. And we see that regularly, that our accuracy is actually kind of when measured against Nielsen or against actually a holdout set on declared data is much better. And
Brilliant.
we also have obviously kind of agency validations, right? So agencies that actually kind of, really typically, validate the quality of our data. Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jürgen. We're out of time, unfortunately, but that's been a very, very long, but very, very interesting conversation around predictive data and data modeling. And thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much, Lindsay. It was really cool. Thank you very much for having me here. It was really cool.
Delighted to have you. This has been Trader Talk TV, and we will see you next time.
Bye.